Well, I was going to focus a little bit on the kids themselves instead of the parents, and then if there are questions about parents or afterwards we can talk about that. But what I do is immigration law, and so usually my clients are the people who are not legal, and that can sometimes include children. And I always like this comic, so I just put it up for fun. But it also reminds me that the topic here is immigration reform and enforcement, but unfortunately, as for the last 25 years, there really has not been any reform part of that. So we're not really talking about reform unless something does change, but at the very end, we can take a little look at some ideas that I have about what a good reform would look like. So who are these children these children immigrants, it's called? Not everybody comes here legally. I just want to make that clear. A lot of people come here legally for different statuses. They might come as tourists. The parents might say, wow, this is a really nice place, so let's just stay. And they might be here for many years after that. Of course, the people from Mexico, Central America have a little better access to enter illegally. More and more difficult lately. And just as a point, some people ask me this, Canadians cannot really enter illegally because they don't need visas to enter. So if you're coming from the other side and you're a Canadian citizen, you can just come in and it's automatic 6 months. But you are not in status after 6 months, but you don't accrue what's called unlawful presence. So it's a little complicated for Canadians. A lot of kids grow up here now, I've seen this all the time. They marry U.S. citizens. They've been here since they're 1, 2, 3 years old, and they are still undocumented. People married to LPR stands for legal permanent residence. And a lot of people who have been children, came here as children, had petitions filed for them by their parents who maybe legalized during the reforms that did take place in the 80s. And they're still here waiting. They might have reached an age above 21 or older. And there are a lot of children here, or who were children and now they're adults, sitting here waiting for their turn to immigrate. So let's take a look at some of them. Here's one of my favorite old clients. It's so funny to see him now because he's like as old as you guys almost now. And but he was 10 at the time when he's from El Salvador. And Kevin, I call him Jonathan because his name is Jonathan Kevin, but he goes by Kevin. So Jonathan was left in El Salvador at the age of 3. His mother was a single mother, wasn't able to make it, was, literally starving. So she made her way up north. 7 years he lived with his grandma. Then grandma got too sick to take care of him. So she had diabetes. She had to move in with other relatives. The other relatives didn't have room for him. So grandma sent him alone on his way at age 10 to cross the border. And it's kind of funny because they tried to get her across in a car, and they had this Mexican couple, and Jonathan in the back, and he has a very distinct face. His facial features are somewhat, people who are at the border watching people come across would immediately recognize that he didn't have the same facial features as the Mexican people driving him. And so, but actually that wasn't enough for them because they did take him to the Mexican consulate, and he sat there for 10 days. He was too afraid to speak. He just sat there. And finally, when he did open his mouth, he said he was from El Salvador, so they didn't know what to do with them because it's hard to just kick you back to El Salvador. So they were able to contact his mother, who's here legally in the United States. She's in a status called temporary protected status. You guys all remember there was those big earthquakes and everything else that went wrong in El Salvador. And so there are a lot of people sitting here in a temporary protected status. They're not legal residents, they're not U.S. citizens, but they're here legally, they can work legally. But their relatives have no rights. If the relative wasn't here at the same time, they don't get any derivative rights. So Jonathan's stuck. His mother's here legally. She really can't go anywhere. She has no relatives that can take care of him anywhere. She has another child born in the United States, a 6-year-old daughter at the time. She's not married. So he has no place to go. So they released him to mom, but the next day they put him in immigration proceedings. So he's going to be deported by the immigration judge, right? So I call up the attorney. You're going to love this, Amanda. Close your ears. I called the attorney for immigration, and I said, actually, and the good thing is that they're all gone now. All the nice ones have replaced them. So, but here's the old people. The head office ICE counsel, and I said, you know, this guy has nowhere to go. This is his story. You know, this is a sympathetic story. He's 10 years old. You know, don't you think we could just let him here at least as long as his mother's here legally, and then, you know, if she has to go, he would go with him. And the attorney said, quote, "My job is to get rid of as many of them as possible." So I said, gee, God, I didn't know that was your job. Doesn't seem like that should be your job. Seems like your job should be to, you know, weigh the pros and cons of the different immigrants, you know, get rid of people who really we don't want here as Americans and, you know, help out the ones who are sympathetic. But apparently that was not the case.
What year was this?
Oh, this was, you know, with Tom Day.
This is the
So it's been
prior
a while.
administration.
Yeah, no, oh, yeah, that's true. This is a while ago. And so, so I had another idea, which, you know, it was a little bit of a difficult sell. It wasn't really my idea, actually. It was Jonathan's mom said, well, I can't take care of him. I have to give him up someplace else. So he actually went to live with another family. And I said, that's great. Let's go to our local judge, to Judge Leonard, who unfortunately now, he unfortunately retired, so you guys will not have the benefit of Judge Leonard, who was the most wonderful judge. He was the juvenile court judge here.
But you have a new great juvenile court judge.
Yeah, so we, you know, at least we got that. And so we explained the story to Judge Leonard, who is a lot nicer than, I should step back, because we had a first hearing for Mr. Cruz in our immigration court, and our judge said, you know, what are you even doing here? Why are you even bringing this to me? And this, you know, if you're not come back in, you know, 2 weeks' time with some answer for me, I'm ordering him deported, and this is not my problem. So we all, you know, tucked our tails under and scampered out, and we went to Judge Leonard. And when we explained that story to Judge Leonard, he said, God, that's just terrible. What are we going to do to help him? I find he's been abandoned by his mother, and I'm going to sign an order immediately making him a ward of this court, and that makes him eligible to apply for special immigrant juvenile status. And so he immediately signed the order, and, you know, a hearing was held, and all interested parties were invited, and everybody agreed that this court petition should be signed, and then but that wasn't good enough for the immigration judge. That wasn't going to hold it, so we had to go to the newspapers. And this lovely article went out, and the next hearing we had with the judge went something like this. I see there's been some publicity on this matter, Ms. Hecht. Yes, Your Honor. Well, I'm willing to dismiss in that case, and I wish you all the best of luck. And so that was the end of that, and we were all happy. And Jonathan will be attending the U of O probably any day now. But it's difficult because really there's not a lot you can do. So, you know, let me kind of step back here and let's talk about who these kids are. I mean, you know, and what do you think should be done? Because just because they're kids and they've been brought here by their parents, I mean, are they automatically sympathetic and therefore they should all become U.S. citizens? They should, you know, is that really what we're saying? You know, we've got this DREAM Act proposal which says, okay, well, people who have gone to school here, who have been, you know, raised here, and want to go on to college and complete either 2 years of college or 2 years of military, they should be allowed to stay. Well, okay, great, but you know, how long is that going to, is that everybody? You know, should everybody just ship their kids up here, go to school here? So there are a lot of issues. I mean, there really are two sides of the issue that have to be carefully looked at. And just because they're kids doesn't mean you shouldn't look at all, you know, is there a certain age that you're just automatically eligible because you were brought here and it's not your fault? I mean, these are questions that Congress is going to have to ask. And then more difficult, should they be allowed to go to school at all? Right now, like Plyler v. Doe or something that says you can go to school automatically, you have a constitutional right if you're a resident. But, is that correct? Should our taxes be paying for people to just come here and stick their kids in school? And is there a limit to how that should work? Should they just automatically be eligible if they end up marrying a U.S. citizen, no matter how long they've lived here legally? So these are all questions. What if there's no place to go? All questions you should be asking yourself, and the answers are not readily apparent at all. So which one was the immigrant, guys? Him or her? Who looks more American?
Both American.
Yeah, well, okay, so both brought here, same age 8. He's basically orphaned. No father, mother died, brought by aunt and uncle who are U.S. citizens, but never adopted. She was brought by mom and dad. They all immigrated the same. She's the U.S. citizen. They both went to school together, high school sweethearts, done everything the same. She's a U.S. citizen, he's not. So, there is this issue of fairness. I mean, how fair is that? Of course, the aunt and uncle are a little bit to blame because they could have adopted him. But they didn't realize that what they do in Mexico is they just put your name as the parents on the birth certificate. And they think that you're okay, that you're mine now. But of course, that would be fraud if we submitted that to immigration, so it doesn't work. So that's the dilemma. Now they're married, but she wants to finish college. She's got plans, and he wants to work, but he doesn't want to work illegally. And it's funny because the ones that are raised here since they're that young, they're like, I really don't want to work illegally. I'm not going to do it. And that's like worse for them, because if they don't have a job, they don't show that they're supporting the family and all these things, then they don't have like a reason to be living here, and so nobody's going to grant them anything. So it's hard to explain that without saying, yes, you should work illegally. So right now, in order for him to immigrate, we have to send him back to Mexico. He's now accrued over 1 year of unlawful presence over the age of 18. We have to ask for a waiver, and the waiver has to show it would be an extreme hardship to her if he can't come live with her. And that's a pretty high standard, extreme hardship. So we're waiting a little bit to see what happens. Maybe they'll reform, maybe we'll send them. These guys are cute, aren't they? So these guys are down in Klamath. And the funny thing is, when they married, like some white guy, the family gets involved and like, well, I'm paying for this, so file it and get it done, And it doesn't work that way. So she's been here since she was probably 2 or 3. But the good thing about Anna is they're high school sweethearts, and she's not 19 yet. She's only 18. So right now, she doesn't have any relatives in Mexico. Don't know anybody in Mexico. Everybody came here. She's been here since she was 2. So right now, the scramble is get a petition and get them married. So, it's really kind of awful being the attorney, because here you see these 18-year-old kids. You're like, get married. So, it's really painful. But they want to
stay away from my kids.
Stay away from mine. I know, it's terrible, but that's it, like, okay, get married, and you'll be leaving on, October 5th, because then you won't have accrued over 6 months of unlawful presence, and, get your passport right away, and go stay with whoever you don't know. Relatives are relatives, or find somebody, and then, when the petition gets approved, we can bring you back in. And you're going to be going to Juarez, Ciudad Juarez, where everybody's being murdered by yourself. Have fun. So that's their situation, but actually, so there is something to be done if you can catch them and get them married before they're 18 and a half. Isn't that lovely? So there's a question, so what options are available? Military, no. A lot of people think you can join the military, you get naturalized. If you slip on through and then they're embarrassed enough, that might help happen for them. But they're supposed to be checking, and usually they do check and they say you can't sign up. So there are a number of people who every year slip on in and then sometimes work out some way to get legalized. But basically, the military will only take you if you're already a legal permanent resident. Some colleges will take you if you're not a legal permanent resident, but you'll be paying full tuition because you won't be able to get the scholarships for the most part. Places like LCC do have some scholarships for people. So there are some opportunities, and I spend a lot of time. I have this whole spiel about, oh, well, you know, you're not going to get a waiver unless you're in college. You know, there's no way, you know, you really need a college education, which may or may not be true, but it's a good one. And so, junior college, almost for sure, you can get those 2 years of schooling, but a lot of times you have to pay for it instead of getting some funding. You know, so what option? You got the minimum wage job option. You know, usually you can find something out there. The other thing that comes up a lot right now are all these kids have grown up here. Some of them don't even remember coming here. They don't even know that they're not U.S. citizens. And our laws currently say that if you have made a false claim to be a U.S. citizen, unless your parents are U.S. citizens, which is usually not the case, you are forever barred. It's a complete ban to immigrating. So even if you didn't know, it's just strict liability. So we're having a lot of problems right now because people say they did know, but they want to get a job, and they grew up here. Say they mark off they're a U.S. citizen on the form to get a job. That's it. Can't immigrate. Doesn't matter if they marry a U.S. citizen. Doesn't matter if they have 10 kids. Doesn't matter if they're the most sympathetic case in the world. They're not eligible to immigrate now. And the big fear, in my opinion, is that we're creating this huge underclass of people who are fear. They don't feel like they can do anything. So many people coming into my office, parents going, my daughter is a straight A student, really wanted to go to all college. We've come here so that they could achieve, they could be someone. Is there anything you can do? I mean, I don't care about me, but can't you do something for my kid? And the answer is no, unless you beat the kid or something, which is not advice that I'm allowed to give. What would a good immigration reform look like? Well, obviously keeping families together. And so when we talk about kids, I really don't think that one should really just talk about kids. I think we need to talk about families and keeping them together. And a lot of families that I see, one person's legal and 3 or 4 aren't, or one person's not legal. A case that I just filed the appeal brief for yesterday, it's just so sad. The entire family, everybody's legal, but the one kid is 22, so he missed the cutoff to get legal. And then the police got him because he had some girlfriend who was underage. I personally don't like that law. But a lot of people would disagree with that. So the ex-boyfriend of the girlfriend got jealous, so called the police because he was dating her instead, one of those stories. And so then immigration got involved. And so now this one kid who's been here since he was 2 is being deported, and everybody else is legal. And he has no place to go, obviously. So it's really, the whole thing is craziness from our perspective. And, employers, to show that they can need U.S. workers for jobs, make it more difficult to employ undocumented workers, we've got to do something. We can't just say, okay, everybody show up, get a job, work here for 20 years, and then say, oh my God, you're here. What are you guys doing here, We got to have some controls. So I really think that's important to go both sides. And acknowledge that people have been here, and acknowledge some discretion because it's totally crazy. So yeah, sorry that my last little comic. We do need people. We need the workers. They've been here for a long time, and that's it. Thanks.